In this red and blue political roundup, President Trump is walking back comments he made about the U.S. intelligence community's findings on Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
So I'll begin by stating that I have full faith and support for America's great intelligence agencies, always had. And I have felt very strongly that while Russia's actions had no impact at all on the outcome of the election, let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there. There was no collusion at all.
Oh, but some lawmakers on Capitol Hill say the president's latest comments might not be enough to stop their criticisms of his summit with Putin. And for more on this, I want to bring in now Julia Manchester. She is a reporter for The Hill, and she joins me now from Washington. Julia, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me. All
right, we got a lot to talk about here. How are Republicans reacting to the comments from the president saying he trusts the intelligence community, but also his suggestion that his meeting with Putin went better than his meeting with NATO allies?
Right. So yesterday we saw a lot of Republicans really going after the president's comments and trying to distance themselves from them effectively. We saw that Marco Rubio called his assessment incorrect about the intelligence agency. And I think now that President Trump made that remark at the White House today, I think a lot of them are feeling slightly better because they can kind of use that as padding. I think we saw Senator Rob Portman, I believe it was, who said he was happy with that remark, or it was another senator who said similar things like that. But I think a lot of Republicans are feeling slightly better. However, they are concerned because this is the issue of how our allies perceive us. We saw that Senator Mitch McConnell came out and said, well, we believe the intelligence community. We side with our NATO allies, and really kind of contradicted what the president said. And they're not going after the president directly. However, they're definitely trying to distance themselves.
All right, Senator Bob Corker, who heads the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, is calling on Congress to take action on the president's ability to impose tariffs. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Bob Corker today said that the president was emboldening Putin through all of the tariffs on various allies, many of them in the EU and what would be considered the NATO bloc. So he's really pushing for that at this point, and that's tying into this whole issue of how we're perceived by the European Union as they come under more threat by Russia, and as Russia really tries to, I guess, expand its span of influence through election meddling and other ways and means.
And speaking of threats, Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee told some of your colleagues that Russian meddling is a, quote, act of war. What else did he have to say? And are there any other lawmakers who share his views?
Right. So Steve Cohen really went after the president this morning, called him Donald Duck, basically said, it is an act of war. This is a direct threat. He also said that the U.S. should go after Russian banks through using cyber technology. So that was interesting to hear him say that. And I think a lot of Democrats would agree with that. He was very specific in how he would attack Russia. I don't know what others of his colleagues would say. However, I think a lot of Democrats and Republicans even would consider this an act of war and believe that there should be retaliation at some point. A lot of Republicans have called for additional sanctions. So that's what we've seen so far.
All right, Julia, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for congressional action in response to Monday's summit and questioned whether Putin has something of the president. He also made several requests to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Listen to this.
Where are the notes from that meeting, the contemporaneous notes? What did the president agree to? Was Secretary Pompeo briefed afterwards? Did he write anything down? Were any other members of the president's team? The contemporaneous notes that were taken, particularly in regard to the 2-hour closed meeting, should be turned over to Congress immediately. I'm calling on Leader McConnell and his leadership team to immediately request a hearing with the people I mentioned, Pompeo, Coates, Huntsman, and the rest of the national security team. And I'm calling on Leader McConnell to join us in demanding the contemporaneous notes that were taken.
Everybody, people on both sides wants to know what was said in that 2-hour meeting. Is there a likelihood that McConnell will work with Schumer and Democrats on this?
Yeah, well, we'll really have to see about this. We've seen a lot of people really point to the translator that was in that meeting, President Trump's translator, who would know about that. I think McConnell's going to have to be careful about this because he's walking a fine line between his hawkish Russia stance and the president on this, because we see that in the president's remarks today. He didn't go after Putin at all. He basically said, you know, this was what I meant to say. This is what happened. There was no collusion, but no condemnation of Putin, which is very interesting on his part. So I think McConnell's going to have to walk a very fine line. And if we've seen how McConnell and Schumer have worked together recently, I don't see much compromise on this.
All right. You said it, Julia Manchester. Thank you so much for joining us, Julia.
Thank you.